Hi folks, today's question is the one that all of my recent videos have been leading up to. Did the original church teach or believe a doctrine of Sola Scriptura, or Scripture alone? Now, there's about a 15 or 20 year gap between the events of Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection and the writing of the earliest New Testament documents. And most people accept the fact that before the New Testament was written, there was an oral tradition that passed the stories and sayings of Jesus down through the time until they were written down. But the question is, how was it passed along? It wasn't just a matter of sitting around a campfire and telling the stories. It was passed along specifically through apostolic succession. And that is the succession of teachers handing on the teachings to their students, and those students becoming teachers and handing on the teachings to their students. And if you want more on that, see my video on why Christianity is like Kung Fu. But the bottom line is that tradition, the teachings of the church, actually comes before Scripture. Scripture records or writes down the tradition. And so you have to remember that tradition in the form of apostolic succession was the authority before the New Testament was ever written. Now, St. Paul speaks positively about tradition when he says, "I praise you because you remember me in everything and hold fast to the traditions just as I handed them on to you." That's 1 Corinthians 11:2. Now, I know that in the past I've criticized certain Bible translations that I think play fast and loose with the Greek word tradition and the concept of tradition, and sometimes they substitute the English word teachings where the Greek word says traditions. But at least that proves the point that the traditions are the teachings, and the teachings are the traditions. The teachings that the apostles received and handed down are the first traditions of the church. And we know that St. Paul submitted his own teaching to the original apostles. He admits that. And so again, the point is that tradition comes before Scripture. But the doctrine of sola scriptura, or Scripture alone, implies that it's Scripture as opposed to tradition. It implies that somehow tradition cannot be a factor in helping us understand the Bible. Now, I go into all of this in depth in my new book, Reading Scripture Like the Early Church, 7 Insights from the Church Fathers to help you understand the Bible. And so, if you've been paying attention in my videos, you already know the answer to the question. No, the original church did not teach a doctrine of sola scriptura. Sola scriptura is, in fact, self-contradictory because the doctrine itself is not in the Bible. In other words, where in the Bible does it say Scripture alone? It doesn't. And so you can't hold to a doctrine of Scripture alone because the doctrine of Scripture alone is not in Scripture. Where in the Bible does it even say that there should be a New Testament? I'm not saying there shouldn't. I'm just saying the Bible doesn't tell us to have a New Testament. So if you believe that everything you believe has to be spelled out in the Bible, then you could not have your own Bible. You could not have a church building. You could not have modern musical instruments in worship, let alone microphones or amplification, and you couldn't have a church bus. Okay, so now you say, well, wait a minute, that's different. A church bus is different than, say, the rosary. Is it though? Because the minute you say it's different, you have to ask the question, how do you know where to draw the line between things that are like the church bus that aren't in the Bible, but you can have them, and things like the rosary that aren't in the Bible, but some people say you shouldn't? And so where do you draw the line, and who gets to draw that line? Now, to be fair, even Martin Luther didn't think of sola scriptura in this very strict way. But the point is that behind this doctrine of sola scriptura, there are 3 false assumptions. The first is that what is not commanded in the Bible is somehow prohibited, that the Bible has to be somehow exhaustive. The second is that anyone can read the Bible and understand it. And the third is that the church and its doctrine cannot develop or cannot be further clarified through time after the time of the Bible. And if that were true, well, we wouldn't even be able to have the word Trinity, because while the doctrine of the Trinity is in the Bible, the word Trinity is not. And so if you stick with Sola Scriptura, you would not be able to have a lot of the things that are essential to Christianity. In fact, if you strictly stick with Sola Scriptura, then you would have to allow slavery. The truth is that the condemnation of slavery is a 3rd century development of the church. No one in the church before the 3rd century that we know of ever said that slavery was incompatible with Christian faith. And so if you allow that church teaching can develop on the matter of slavery, then you also have to allow the other developments that were formalized at the same time or even earlier, like the sacrament of confession, penance, and reconciliation. You see, there is this myth that the Protestant Reformation gave the Bible back to the people. But that's simply not true, because even the Reformers knew that Scripture is not easy to understand, and it's not the case that just anyone can read it and interpret it. If you want to join me for an in-depth Bible study, we're going to be following the journey of the original church through the Scriptures and through some of the other early Christian documents. I'm going to be going through the whole New Testament chronologically, reading it like the original church did. So check out the original church community on locals.com. So come and join us, and you'll be able to catch up by watching the recorded videos. So the doctrine of Sola Scriptura is based on the false premise that the Bible is easy for anyone to understand. But the original Christians did not believe that. And you know it's not true. Otherwise, why would everybody have to write their own commentary? And also, the doctrine of Sola Scriptura is based on the false premise that somehow tradition is in opposition to Scripture. But the original Christians did not believe that either. They knew that you need tradition to help you interpret Scripture. And in fact, that every heresy ever is the result of the attempt to interpret Scripture apart from tradition. And that's how it was in the original church, and it still is for most Christians in the world today. Hey, thanks for watching this video all the way to the end. I really appreciate that. Please share this video with your friends, and please join me in the original church community on locals.com. Don't forget that if you join the original church community on locals.com, you can join me each week for a live, in-depth, chronological Bible study. It's live streamed every Saturday, but you can watch it later if you're not available. So join me for that, and I'll see you there. I hope to see you there. I hope to see you there, and I'll see you there.